Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Spoiler Warning Podcast. This is review number 771 with a review of Twisters. I'm Christopher Schnese.
And I'm Stephen Miller.
And if you're joining us for the first time, the Spoiler Warning Podcast is a weekly film review program. Each week on the show, we're going to dive in, debate, discuss, and argue over the latest films coming to a theater near you. This week, it's been a while, but we're back. We're talking about a little film called Twisters. It is the sequel to the 1996 film Twister. First of all, Stephen, have you ever experienced the, natural phenomenon known as a tornado?
I cannot say that I have. No, I mean, I've seen dust devils or whatever. Is that what you call them? Dirt devils, dust devils? Like when you're in the desert and you have like those little tornadoes. Like I've definitely seen them and probably had them blow nearby, but obviously not the actual devastation of a big one that can, cause chaos or throw debris everywhere. I've seen them in the distance. Like there have been times when I've been driving across middle America and I've seen like thunder and then I've like seen what seemed like, heavy wind or something starting, but nothing like what you see in these movies. How about you?
I haven't either. I mean, for long-time listeners of the show, or maybe even short-time listeners of the show, know that Stephen and I currently reside in California and have for a good portion of our lives. And we have to deal with earthquakes, but never anything like a tornado. I did spend some time in areas that were tornado prone. The most I've ever had is warnings that say go down to a shelter. So I spent a little time in a little underground shelter that, if an actual tornado happened, I don't know what the hell would have happened to us because it didn't seem very safe. But there was nothing that actually touched down in our area. So I've luckily never had to deal with, a tornado before. But definitely something that I've been curious about, given, seeing the original Twister film back then.
Yeah, I mean, watching these movies in particular makes me want to Google how strong is a tornado? Like, how much are these movies playing it up or like 10xing it? And how much can your standard bad tornado actually throw a car? This is easily Googleable stuff that I just have not Googled.
I mean, there's definitely like I've seen like on news and stuff a lot of devastation post Twister, but yeah, I've never seen like live footage of vehicles being like lifted and thrown and stuff like that. So these films definitely make it look scary as hell.
Yeah.
And not something that I ever want to have to go through. So, I'll stick to my earthquakes over here.
Right. Yeah. Earthquake chasing is more your speed. One's coming, and then you just get in the car and go and try to find a place where rumbling feels the most intense. Climb on top of a skyscraper.
Pick up a handful of rocks and drop it on the ground and go, yep, it's time for the big one. But yeah, what were, besides the scariness of what tornadoes can do destruction wise, what were your thoughts on the original Twister?
So I had actually never seen the original Twister until this weekend.
Oh shit.
Yeah, I think I had seen clips, like there's a pretty famous sequence where Helen Hunt and Bill Paxton are driving and having an argument while he's kind of swerving back and forth. And I had seen that before. So maybe I had seen Twisters, like the original Twister on TV and just forgotten. But I don't think I'd ever actually intently sat down and watched it. It was always one of those things where it was like it was supposed to be fun. Like you knew it was a big spectacle, but it never got the kind of cultural cachet that was like, oh my God, you have to go back and watch Twister. I feel like it never really got the red carpet treatment that other big things like the Nicolas Cage action movies of the 90s or whatever did, where I was like, by the time I came of age watching movies, I was like, I have to go back and see these things. Twister was kind of just not on my radar until this sequel finally gave me the excuse to go back and watch it. How about you?
I was actually a really big fan of the original Twister. I saw it in theaters in downtown San Diego. There used to be this theater, I forget what it was called, but it was just one. It was one. Well, it was 3 screens, but it was one auditorium. So they would project your film across like 3 screens, and it was just like seeing Twister in that theater. It was just so fucking rad. And I definitely went through like a period of time where I was like, could I chase storms? Like I probably
okay. Now let's play which side character in the original Twister was Christopher.
I mean, I'm definitely not Philip Seymour Hoffman.
I know. I mean, Philip Seymour Hoffman was gonna be the one that I chose, but there were a few possibilities. You know, there's a lot of good kind of like proto skater deadbeats. You know, like if they were born a few years later, they would be in mid-90s or something.
Yeah. I mean, it definitely made it made it look fun, right? Like a little ragtag group of people who just hop in a caravan of vehicles and just follow it, blasting music, and then watch crazy shit happening, right? So
totally. I think you're a mix between Philip Seymour Hoffman and Alan Ruck, actually. It's kind of a combo of both.
All right. Yeah, I could do a little rabbit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. So when it came time to see Twisters, were you ready to chase it? Were you feeling it?
I was excited for a big, silly blockbuster, right? Like when I remembered, like I've been kind of going through a kick after doing my 50s marathon of watching a lot of, if not all serious movies, at least like slower paced movies where you have to kind of intently watch them. For the last few months, I've been doing a palate cleanser of just like 80s and 90s pulpy action movies, which has been a lot of fun. And so Twisters had me pumped, and I was pumped for an excuse to go back and watch the original too. And yeah, I was excited. I had no expectations of this. Honestly, the way the trailer and the title sells it seems like this is the twins movie. You know, this is the we got twins. Like, oh my God, there was one in the original and now there's two. And that isn't what this movie is, right? But like that was how silly it painted it. And I was like, hell yeah, I'm here for it. Like two monsters that are, you know, it's Twister versus Twister. It's, you know,
This is the Jason versus Freddy.
Exactly. Yeah. This is just like the Twister on Twister action that I'm here for. But yeah, I was excited. I was excited, assuming it would be very, very dumb. And you know, as much as we talked in the Hitman review how I think Glen Powell is a very charismatic guy, but I'm not like 100% bought into him as like a guy that I like necessarily. But I wanted to see the Glen Powell star on the rise. You know, I want to watch that narrative take place. So yeah, I was stoked. How about you? Were you excited? Is this a sequel you wanted to exist, or were you afraid that it would tarnish the original thing that you loved?
So I think going into it, this was the sequel that I didn't know I wanted. I mean, you know, there is a level of fun that you get from disaster films, and these are disaster films, right? But the difference between, oh my God, there are volcanoes in your city, or oh my God, there are meteors hitting the earth, or oh my God, there's global warming that's getting way worse than we can prepare for. Oh wait, that's real life. Sorry.
Yeah.
The difference between this and those is, these are localized events that people are going after, right? Like this isn't a bunch of hikers are hiking when a tornado strikes the side of the hill they're on, right? You know, it's not a forest fire or something like that.
Right.
It is people who are actively chasing down these storms and trying to, you know, science the shit out of something so they can figure out how to help other people who aren't chasing the thing, right? It is chasing people. Other people are chasing it. It's about a team of people working together who are putting themselves in danger, right? Every film is going to involve getting yourself stuck in a situation that you're not necessarily ready for in the context of what you were expecting. But I think that like it like flips sort of the normal, you know, it's not going to be you know, people who are trying to like, you know, race across the country before some disaster happens. It is specifically like, hey, there's a tornado. Let's go do something around the tornado. Isn't this crazy? And I think that sort of excites me more than your average disaster film. And I think that I'm always kind of ready for what's going on. And I'm ready for definitely like a 2024 ragtag group of people who are going off and chasing twisters, right? Like it was a thing that it doesn't feel like, oh, I would have always done a Twister movie if only the technology wasn't there. You know, it doesn't feel like that sort of thing. It's just like, you know what? We could do another Twister now, right? So going into it, I was very, very excited.
Yeah, I'm happy for you.
Yeah, Steven, should we figure out if that excitement was warranted?
Oh yeah, let's talk about it.
All right, let's take a listen to the trailer for Twisters and then come back and give everybody a review.
The once-in-a-generation tornado outbreak continues across Oklahoma.
We've never seen tornadoes like this before, and we need your help.
No, I don't chase anymore.
Kate, we can save lives.
I'll give you 1 week.
All right, fellas. We got PhDs from NASA, FEMA, and Kate. She's the smartest person I know.
Hey, dudes. This is interesting. Who are they?
It's Tyler Owens. Calls himself a tornado wrangler. If you feel it.
I'm scared of nothing and I'm scared to death. You know, our crew is not like your crew. I can't breathe and I catch my breath. We don't need PhDs and fancy tech. Sometimes the old ways are better than the new.
Well, you can always trust a guy who puts his face on a t-shirt. Are those fireworks?
Yes, ma'am. You got quite the reputation, city girl. You think you can disrupt a tornado?
In theory. But in the field, in the moment, I got it wrong. We never had a chance.
You want one?
Are you seeing this?
We got twins! Twins!
They're combining. Go faster.
Let's ride. It's all right to be scared. Fear's the reason you do it. You don't face your fears, you ride them.
Holy.
You ever see anything like this?
Not like this.
Hold on, hold on, hold on!
That was the trailer for Twisters. Reading the description from IMDb, a retired tornado chaser and meteorologist is persuaded to return to Oklahoma to work with a new team and new technologies. I don't know why that sentence is so hard for me to read. We got Twisters, y'all. Stephen Miller, what did you think of Twisters?
Yeah, so I thought Twisters was pretty fun. I would say it was about what I was expecting, maybe slightly better than I was expecting in some ways. And a lot of that has to do with Glen Powell. You know, it doesn't give me joy to say that because, again, I don't like adore him, but man, does he fucking sell this role as the hotshot tornado chaser who what I can say about him is he knows his angles so well. Like, he knows exactly how he comes off on screen, and he knows how to use that as a strength, right? Like in Maverick, he's the kind of douchebag, but he's the douchebag and it's like you kind of love him because he's a smarmy asshole and he gets that. And in this movie, he plays that so much. You know, he's cocky, he like puts his face on a shirt, he makes fun of himself constantly, but then he has the swagger that just carries you and propels you and shoots you up with the movie like a tornado. You know, I mean, he rules in this movie, which is great because I think generally the characters are kind of nothing burgers in this movie. I mean, no offense to Daisy Edgar-Jones. I haven't really seen her in anything before, but I don't think as the lead she is given that much to work with here. Like, this is really the Glen Powell show, and he sells it very well. So I watched these out of order. I watched Twisters first, and then I watched Twister later. And I was kind of struck by how little this feels like a sequel and how much more it feels like a reimagining or a remake just set in modern day. I mean, aside from having Dorothy, which even I knew in the opening scene when they talked about Dorothy, I was like, okay, I know that has to be a first movie thing. Like, I don't know much, but I know a callback when I see one.
Yeah.
other than that, this is basically just telling the same story with like some swapping of characters, right? Like you have a woman with a traumatic past with tornadoes that kind of informs her current work. You have a character who feels where things are going via vibes and has this kind of innate sense of where the tornado is going to lead. You have a side crew who are way more technical and competitive, but they don't have that same like magic spark. You've got a mother figure that they visit who has a home that's like a sort of respite for everyone. You have the wacky crew of tornado chasers. You have very direct allusions to movies and movie theaters as like kind of a fun thing to comment on the spectacle.
There's one thing real fast before you go on. I laughed. I was the only person in my theater that laughed when there's a moment where somebody else, we got to get them into the theater. And I was like, that's clearly like, we got to do a big spectacle movie to get people going back to the movies.
That is the production meeting that led to Twisters being created. This movie is basically an update or a reimagining of the original, and I think it does it really well. Like it has its own fresh take on it. I mean, the first Twister, I'm sure I am not the first or 1,000th person to comment on this. It kind of functions as like a monster movie. I mean, the tornado, literally even the audio, the Foley when a tornado is like hitting the ground is like a loud roar, like a beast is like screaming, you know? Yeah. And the set pieces in the first movie, probably because of limitations of technology and budget, almost feel like haunted houses, right? It's like the tornado is creeping closer and they're trying to get further and further away, and then bad things are coming to threaten them. This is much more a movie that is about like the actual idea of the devastation that a tornado can do and like what happens to the towns that are left behind in its wake. And it's kind of about the beauty and terror and awe-inspiring horror of nature in a way that is just it feels much more modern, just like Twister, the original, felt like a 90s movie, right? Like I feel like Lee Isaac Chung was very smart in how he decided to tackle this. It also, I have to say, not as a dig on the original, but I understand the hero's journey in this movie much more because I understand the actions, the positive effect that will happen from them chasing the tornado, right? The first movie, really charismatic people. I'll take Helen Hunt over Daisy Edgar-Jones any day of the week. But the first movie, they are basically heroes in search of adrenaline who, other than saving, you know, someone's aunt, they don't really actually have a thing that they accomplished by doing all this, except for this like thrill of the chase and the hope that maybe they're going to map something. It's much more tenuous, like what we're rooting for in the first movie.
To be fair, the original film is about they have an idea and they're trying to execute on that idea. And spoilers for the original Twister, they literally do it right at the end of the movie. So,
right, exactly.
So in theory, they would have to do that 50 more times to get enough data to be able to do anything with their actual goal, right? So it's more about they have this wild idea, they've been constantly failing at it, and by the end, by coming together, they actually achieve it, right? But yeah, to your point, when this movie starts, we're still at 3-minute warning for tornadoes.
Right. Exactly. I mean, like the first movie, their goal is to map a tornado, but the actual tension of the movie is like a patent race, basically. It isn't the altruistic nature of if we map tornadoes, look at how much better the world will be. Like, obviously, Helen Hunt has some kind of backstory that hints at that a little bit, but whatever. This movie is much more leaning into the we are doing this to help people. We are driving to towns to try to get people out of harm's way whenever a tornado is happening. We are raising money. I'm not going to spoil all the twists that happen in it, Twisters. But it is much more about like trying to anchor the characters into a real goal and what effect are they going to have in the world. And that makes it cheesier in a way, but it is also, for me, gratifying. Like, I think this has a more gratifying conclusion than the original movie did, because the stakes are so well set up and we know exactly what we want them to accomplish.
Yeah.
I also think the set pieces are great in this movie. Like they're really well done. I think the tornado chasing, I, again, had never seen it on screen before because I hadn't seen the first Twister yet. I was pretty dazzled by it. Like I don't want to go out there and chase a tornado on my own, but it definitely accomplished the goal of making it feel real and massive and like a thrilling thing to be a part of.
Yeah.
There are also scenes that are more like the natural disaster movie of like, what will a tornado do to a town? There's a set piece in a pool in particular that like you really get the enormity and the horror and like how no one has anything they can do in the face of such a like nightmarish thing. And that is also really, really well done. And there's the swagger, again, is well done. There's a lot of humor, comedy in this movie. There are a lot of things that I think are both good world building and also kind of tongue in cheek, like the truck that Glen Powell drives that has a drill where he can basically like plant it, anchor it deep in the ground.
Yeah.
So a tornado can't uproot it. There's just so many fun things in the movie that are just, it is entertaining to root for. When Glen Powell does the little thing with his finger, like I fall for it. Like he's cool. He's fucking badass. And this movie, it honestly ends so well. Like it has a few beats toward the end where Glen Powell is just doing his Glen Powell thing, and you're like, God damn you. You won me over. You won me over, you son of a bitch. So yeah, like I think the movie is silly. I think when it is about anything other than tornadoes, it kind of falls apart to me. Like there's a whole subplot about Anthony Ramos and kind of trying to redo the Carrie Ellis thing from the first movie, and I couldn't care less about any of that. I also, again, don't think Daisy Edgar-Jones is particularly compelling, and a lot more time is spent with her personal journey than I would have cared about. But the movie has the goods. Like, the thing that it sold me on, it delivers, and I have to just kind of stand and cheer for that.
Yeah. So overall, I had a great time with this film. I think, as you said, it sort of accomplishes exactly as much as it needs to, and then it updates it for modern times, and it sort of is able to execute on having, more conceptual science in it and more exciting, scenes because they're capable of doing more, plus the characters are even more heightened and more exciting as far as like the wild stuff they're getting, specifically Glen Powell's like group of people is more exciting than Bill Paxton's group of people are in the previous film, right? But as you said, like it's a modern time versus a 90s sort of thing. I think, and I'm saying this in a weird way, I know, that I think this film is hurt by the existence of the original one, not because the original did anything differently or better or anything, but I feel the homaging to the original is so weird because it doesn't feel like an Easter egg. It feels like a conscious effort, like the fact that Glen Powell has a red truck because they had a red truck in the other one. The fact that like the wild character drives a Winnebago because the wild character drove a Winnebago in the original one and plays music out of the speakers that are attached to the front. There was so much thing, like the fact that they even have a thing called Dorothy attached to the back of their thing. And they're literally building the same little spherical little doodads, still with the aluminum cans. Like they didn't even modernize. It's like these students. I mean, I get it. They're students. They're like they watched Discovery Channel documentary about old storm chasers. Like, shit, we could do that. And like they went off and started doing it for their project. I feel like there's so much stuff. And then like the stuff that they do with the homages where they try to flip everything on its head, right? The original one were people who were in it for the love of what they do, not for the money. And this film frames this in the opposite point of view where it's like, hey, money can actually help you solve these problems. And it like builds this group of people who are using modern technology and money to be able to achieve things that the other people can't. And then the quote unquote bad guys, at least at the start of the film, happen to be the guys who are like, woo, we're just doing this shit for fun. Yeah, we're on YouTube streaming right now. Yeah. Right? Like it feels like such a weird choice to like do your own thing and modernize it, but then try to make every visual thing reference the original in some way. As you said, like just going back to even having the mother figure that they have to visit partway through, who's going to unlock whatever needs to happen for the people to be able to do their next thing.
But no steak and eggs, unfortunately. So automatically that makes it worse.
That was definitely a bummer. But even from the standpoint, it's like these films have a formula, right? Tragedy leads to something, right? The problem is this film homages that by also starting with a scene that results in tragedy. But the problem is, in the original film, the tragedy is what got Helen Hunt into storm chasing, right? In this one, it's what got Daisy Edgar-Jones out of storm chasing.
Right.
So it's like you have her experience tragedy, but only after she's already in the game. So she has to get out of the game only to bring her back into the game. And it feels like this attempt to everything has to homage and or homage and then flip the script. And I feel like if this film would have just stuck to its own guns and did its own thing, maybe have like one little thing, right? Maybe when she goes to the aunt's house, it is Helen Hunt. You know what I mean? Like, you know what I mean? Like you can do things to homage the original without needing it to be every fucking visual thing the entire movie. And it's like maybe everybody working on this really loved the original and they're doing it from a part of the heart. But it feels like a weird decision. Okay, so now that I got all out of the way, this film is still fun as hell. Yeah. Like I don't have as big a problem with the Daisy Edgar-Jones as you. I don't necessarily think she carries the film, but she has this ability to play off Glen Powell in a way where like her sort of I don't have time for this shit way that she deals with him, I thought was kind of entertaining. Like you were already talking about Glen Powell doing the like twister motion with his hand, and like when she does that back to him when she's driving alongside, I'm like, that shit, I'm here for it. Like they're
right. That's like Aubrey Plaza smiling in season 3 of Parks and Rec or something. You're like, you got her.
yeah. It's just like a thing where it like I enjoyed enough of the play between them that I felt like, you know, they did have chemistry together that propelled their characters forward.
I agree they had chemistry together. It's just a part is where I think her character isn't given much to do. I don't really blame her. It's like the character just is too much of a saint for there to be a lot there.
Yeah. No, I feel that. But I think overall this is a fun film. It delivered exactly what it needed to do. I had a fun time in it, and I enjoyed kind of every moment with it. I do kind of wish they weren't trying to flip the script with like who's the good guy, who's the bad guy, what are the good and bad guys like interested in. And I wish we could just spend more time with Glen Powell's team. Like if this film was them doing their thing and then Daisy Edgar-Jones like runs into them somehow and then joins them to do her science project or whatever, like I think it would be way more fun because those characters don't really get enough time to shine and grow on their own. They're kind of just there to deliver miniature amounts of exposition from time to time and to have moments where they're like cheering everybody else on as they drive into tornadoes. So I all in all, amazing time with this film. I just was like saddened by how much it felt it needed to rely on the first.
Yeah, it's interesting, and it kind of speaks to how different our experience was because I hadn't seen the original. Now, I don't know if I had binged the original 5 minutes before watching this movie, if I would feel differently. It kind of feels like you have to be steeped in it enough to feel the homages and inversions as something. Like, for me, even watching the two back-to-back in the flipped order, I never really felt like this movie was doing too much to homage the original. Like, everything you just said makes total sense. And the degree to which they're consciously inverting every dynamic, like, that is very clear to me now. It didn't hamper it at all for me. Like, it felt like a natural storytelling device in the moment. It didn't feel like hackneyed or like the only thing that I felt this is a reference was Dorothy. Everything else felt totally authentic to me without it seeming like it was being crammed in for any reason. So That's just kind of interesting to hear, like how different the experience can be if you know what it is playing off of so much that you can be like, you can see the machinery at work and get annoyed by it.
Here's one thing though, like here's a perfect example. There's literally the same moment where one team of people is driving on a road and the other team like veers in from the side through like a set of crops and it swerves on and everybody freaks out because somebody just appeared, right? And it's literally, it's the same group if you're counting vehicles and motivations, but it's a different context with who the main character is currently riding with. So it's just like one of those things where I'm like that shot is literally just there to go, remember in the first one where they're like, where's the road, rabbit? Oh my God, the road's right here.
I mean, so you say it's only there to do that, but I love that scene, and I didn't even know the original existed yet. So it accomplished something. It accomplished something.
Yeah, I know.
But I can see it. Like it definitely is playing with all those things. It just didn't. I don't know. None of those things rung out to me at all. I think you have to really be a fan of the original movie to feel what it is doing there.
Yeah.
Because like you mentioned in the original. I always want to call Helen Hunt either Bonnie Hunt or Holly Hunter. It's like the worst name confusion I ever have. But anyway, in the original, Helen Hunt, like you said, her trauma informs why she gets so into tornadoes, right? Whereas in this movie, they flip it. But that also fits a very classic script, which is the reluctant hero who like believes in themselves too much and it hurts other people, and then they're out of the game and they have to get pulled back.
Yeah, the person who has to do one more job.
Exactly. That is its own movie trope that is well established. That is not something that is just out of nowhere, right? It's an inversion, but it's also a very gratifying one as an audience member.
Yeah.
And I think most of those inversions were like that for me. Some nitpicks. One, this is just the sciencey person in me. It has been almost 30 years since Dorothy, right? If we assume the timeline of the original movie lines up with this sequel. And the big thing Anthony Ramos just realized like a year ago is that they can get 3D if they use multiple cameras. And first of all, the original one was in 3D, or at least the visual that you see of, them in motion in the original Dorothy is definitely like a 3D spiral already. But everyone who has ever thought about anything ever knows that multiple cameras help you get 3D.
I don't know. I know a company that built their whole premise on moving one camera instead of using multiple cameras.
Same thing. A moving camera is just multiple cameras in time, man.
That was mostly a joke just for you.
I know. One thing I also liked is, so this movie, I guess I'm going to spoil the very beginning of this movie, but anyone who really paid attention to the trailer would probably already know this. The movie opens with the young crew of storm chasers, right? Helmed by Daisy Edgar-Jones. That is a kind of ragtag crew of who's who in young actors from right now. Like there's the daughter from Mad Men. I reckon like almost everyone I recognized from something, and I was like, oh my god, this is a great cast. This is going to be so fun to watch this like How to Blow Up a Pipeline type movie with them.
How to blow up a tornado.
Yeah, exactly. And then almost all of them cease to be in the movie immediately. Like they're only in that prologue. But then there's another crew of ragtag people. Like Sasha Lane she is so well fit. Like she had to be in this movie.
Yeah.
Right? And I just like the kind of embarrassment of riches, because that is something that the original movie had in spades too. Like all of the storm chasers are like a who's who of people who were either just getting famous or were almost famous or like, were about to be very, very, very famous. And just watching that movie was so much of a joy, just of like, oh my God, it's that guy and that guy. Oh God, that guy too. Wait, who is he, And I think both of these movies have that in common in a way that I really enjoyed. Another thing they both have in common, soundtracks fucking rip. I'm not a country guy, but man, I had fun with the music in both of these movies. It makes me want to go out to Oklahoma and just drive around. It doesn't make me want to buy property in Oklahoma, but it does make me want to, experiment with some good old country music.
Yeah, depending on the time of year, Stephen, I might be able to get you a good deal on some property in Oklahoma.
Yeah, you know a guy.
Yeah.
One cameo that you might not have recognized. There's a scene at a motel right before the pool scene in this movie. And there is a guy at the front desk who's being kind of a dick, who doesn't, he wants a better room and he's ignoring the tornado warnings that are happening. Did you know that's Bill Paxton's son, James Paxton, is that actor? Little fun wink.
I wouldn't have known it if it wasn't told to me, but
okay.
Yeah.
Anyway, I laughed at that. For some reason I knew what he looked like already, and I thought that was fun.
Nice. It was something that was told to me, and I said, huh, and then I forgot about it, and then as you were starting to say it, I was like, I remember who this is supposed to be, somebody, and I don't remember who.
Now, when you say was told to me, do you mean you heard it on a podcast, or you mean a human being actually talked to you about it?
Jamie told me. I think she read it in an article. But yeah.
Cool. I was imagining you were at the theater and then a stranger just like leaned over and was like, Bill Paxton's son.
Yeah, a stranger leaned over and said, "Where did your mother go? And also, did you know that's Bill Paxton's son?"
That is a callback to something that only I will know about.
Hey, other people listen to the podcast too.
Did we tell that story on the podcast?
Yeah,
The
100%.
Jazz Hands Man?
Yeah, I definitely. It's the only guy with better finger guns than Glen Powell.
Nice.
Let's see. Anything else to talk about, Stephen?
I think I'm twisted out.
Here's the real question: Are you gonna see Twisters?
Tristers? I think I might. Yeah, no, I would watch if they did another one. It is kind of surprising to me. I didn't read an article. I saw the headline of an article and made a note to read it and never read it. It was either Bill Paxton or Helen Hunt gave an interview where they talked about how there was going to be a sequel to Twister a few years ago that they were involved in, and that for some reason got kiboshed, and instead they did this like totally new reimagining of it. I don't know if I like the idea of them doing a third movie with the same cast. Like, I just don't know that I care enough about the real human beings in this movie at all to want to see them again.
Yeah.
But I guess I want to see I think Glen Powell is the right amount of Glen Powell here, where he is an outsider for like a third or a half of the movie and then takes center stage toward the end. I feel like a movie where he is the hero the whole time is just too much of him, right? Like the Maverick Effect is the same thing. Like it makes sense where he's like on the periphery and then eventually he joins the team.
Yeah.
You know, that's kind of what you want.
Yeah, he can be there the entire film and he can be the main character as long as he's pretending to be two different people, one who's Glen Powell and the other one's who's a wet blanket.
Yeah. Oh yeah, he can play both characters. I like that.
But I do want to ask you one thing, and I'll be scientifically vague, I guess. But like obviously in the trailer that we just heard, Glen Powell turns to Daisy Edgar-Jones and says, "You want to disrupt a tornado." So let's pretend like potentially the goal that these people are trying to do in this film is to disrupt a tornado, right? And let's pretend that it's possible to do that, right? It's not like this is the end of tornadoes for all time, right? This isn't
right.
Like creating a weather satellite that can like beam lasers down and stop tornadoes. It's a thing where you have to be ready for it, and you have to always be driving around. And then as soon as you see a tornado,
I mean, you can imagine like it's kind of like an anti-missile defense system or something. Like you could imagine if they figured out a foolproof way to disrupt tornadoes, you could like mechanize that in a way that would protect towns.
Yeah.
Right? At least I could imagine something like that.
But
so I feel like this is the start to a broader solution, right? That the solution isn't driving around and doing this. That's like the proof of concept.
yeah, but it's not like in Independence Day, right? Where they're like, let's show them how to take these boys down. And then like you just assume that now everybody's flying into the all the ships and taking them down. You see them all falling, right? There's no like post-credit scene of like all the tornadoes ever being taken out. So it's just.
But imagine like an army of tornado chasers now that do get mobilized, and they're all like, you know, they all have these systems, and they go out whenever a new one. It's like the Avengers get called or whatever, and they're just like, woohoo!
But it just seems like best case scenario, right? It's like a missile defense system where like missiles come at you, you fire all your missiles at those missiles, take them out. And now if another barrage of missiles come, you've already fired all your missiles. So it's always going to be like every town gets one defense system. And you're like, I don't know, guys, how many EFs is that? You're like, do I want to burn it on the EF1 or do I want to wait till there's like at least a size 3, right?
If you have more than 3 Fs, then you get an R rating. So you got to be careful with that.
Nice.
But anyway, I think if you could prove that a certain substance and mechanism would disrupt a tornado, I feel like people could come up with a way to have pretty safe defense systems. And then if one takes it out, presumably, unless there are 2 like back to back, you can just restock that thing, right? Like I feel like it would still work.
Yeah. I will say though, I feel like there's a large overlap between the part of the country that gets tornadoes and the part of the country that wouldn't like the government filling barrels full of chemicals.
Yes. I agree.
So it's like a problem that doesn't really solve itself because people will be like, I mean, you know, they're like, no, these chemtrails are good.
Well, I mean, and I guess they are private. I don't want to spoil this movie too much, but in this movie, the good guys are not the ones that seem like the government men, right? The good guys are the ones who are like the wild crew that's on YouTube, right? And that feels like it fills the spirit of that side of the country. Like you want them mobilizing instead.
Oh, no, 100%. But I feel like to actually put this plan in place at scale, you would need somebody else to step in. And then it would be a thing where, like, you know, it wouldn't be a bunch of ragtag people building their own anti-tornado system. It would be like the military or the government or an organization that, you know, would necessitate more conversations. But
yeah, or it becomes like the Wild West. Like every town gets a cowboy. So they all get a Glen Powell who's like, all right, I'm the protector of this town and I've got my truck and I've got my, you know, anti-tornado defense system and I'm ready for the call. Yeah. Don't think too hard about it.
Steven, I already have. Should we get to verdict, Steven?
Sure.
All right. If you were going to give us a must-see, recommend with a caveat, wait for rental, pass with a caveat, or a must-avoid, what would you give it?
I'm giving it recommend with a caveat. Like, I don't think this is a great movie, right? Like, I kind of think it follows a formula that as long as it delivered, it would be hard to be below a wait for rental, at least. Like it was pretty easy to do, but I think they did it. And they did it well. I think the set pieces are fun. I think Glen Powell carries the movie sufficiently well, you know. And it made me want to watch the original, and I did, and had a lot of fun with that too. So to me, this accomplished everything it had to do. And it doesn't have to be a really, really, really good movie. It can just be a fun time, and that's all it was. And I'm okay with that. So yeah, recommend with a caveat. Caveat being, this ain't coming close to like a top 10 list or anything for me. This is probably a movie I'm going to forget about, you know, within a couple days. But I had a fun time.
Yeah. There wasn't enough driving through a house that is rolling on top of your street for me.
That is true. There's no set piece as fun as that.
But yeah, it's a recommend with a caveat for me as well. I've given plenty of caveats already. I thought the film was pretty fun. I thought it did exactly what it needed to do. I think that it goes big. It doesn't have to go home. And, you know, it does a good job of updating that the previous film for a modern, you know, audience, etc. And I like a lot about what it did. I just wish it didn't try so hard to reference the original constantly. That became a little grating for me, but I still had fun, still enjoyed every moment of it. And I'll watch a third Twisters. So
I just want to catch it. Did you say it goes big, it doesn't have to go home, or did you say it doesn't have to go through a home? Because this movie goes big and the first movie goes through a home, and I feel like that's a good good comp.
Yeah. I missed the callback to my own thing from 2 minutes before. I'm feeling rusty, Steven. So you know, I got to get back into the swing of things. We didn't even talk about the Twister that we've been through. So
oh yeah.
I'm just glad to have a voice again and to be able to record a new podcast about a new film.
I thought you were talking about politics. You mean literally have a voice again?
No. Yeah, I meant the emotional roller coaster.
I'm proud to have a voice again in the government.
Oh, we're not even going there, Steven. We can't come out of the gates in our first podcast in like over a month.
Yeah, and assuming we keep the current pace of editing, this is, by the time this comes out, like, Trump's already going to be president anyway, so.
Hey, if you look at the last 4 episodes and I keep that pace of editing, technically this episode's already out.
That's true. You just twisted my brain.
All right. Well, on that note, I think that's going to bring us to the end of our review of Twisters. Stephen Miller, if people want to find you the week, where can they do that?
People can find me at threads at @SDavidMiller or @SDavidMiller.com.
People can find me at ChristopherInRealLife.com or ChristopherIRL on a number of social platforms. You can find the podcast over at thespoilerwarning.com where you can get a bunch of the back episodes of the show. If you want to subscribe to the show, you can do so on Overcast, YouTube, Apple Podcasts, or wherever podcasts are found. If you want to know when the episodes go live, you can follow us at twitter.com/spoilerwarning, facebook.com/thespoilerwarning, or instagram.com/thespoilerwarning. If you want to get a hold of us directly, you can send an email to fans@thespoilerwarning.com, or you can use the contact form on our site. Music for this episode will come from a track selected from artlist.io, so hopefully you're enjoying that. I know I do. One of the rare times, Steven, I have the track picked before we even record. I hope people enjoy it. But yeah, we're going to be back next week with a review of Deadpool and Wolverine, whatever the hell the movie's called.
Sure.
And I don't know. We'll look at what else is out and see if there's anything else we can start picking up. We're back in the swing, though, Steven. That's the most important thing.
Yep. And we're never going again. We're never taking another break.
Yep. Never again. All right. Thanks, everybody, for listening, and we'll see you next time.
Bye.
Tearing through my life like a tornado, coming on hotter than a big potato. Just spin me around and see you later. On a hater, put another instead.